constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
I found a reason for me to change who I used to be, a reason to start over new, and that reason is the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three hosts survey the world of comic books. Ladies and gentlemen, today's lyric intro is, of course, The Reason by Hoobastank, July 2004's #1 Billboard, #1 hit, #1. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today, you're being welcomed to a very special Part 1 episode. This is Part 1 of 2 parts.
Part 1.
Part 1 of Astonishing X-Men. We're talking about Astonishing X-Men Volume 3, technically, which was the Joss Whedon, John Cassaday run, 2004 to 2000, whenever, 6 or 7, whenever it ended. We'll get to that in a second. But we're going to talk about the first 12 issues over these 2 parts. So part the first will be issues 1 through 6, the Gifted arc.
The Gifted.
And Dangerous. Gifted and Dangerous. It's just
Dangerous is the second part.
Dangerous is 7. So this is just the Gifted arc. Before we begin, and actually wait, first, let me introduce my hosts as usual. Pat, Trick.
Hello, Alessandro. How's it going?
I'm good.
Are you ready to be astonished tonight?
You know it.
We
I've
have
been
to
astonished all day. I've been astonished all
Did
day.
you you just had that on your tip of your tongue just waiting?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to
And joining us, of course, you hear those dulcet tones coming in from speaker right. That's, of course, Joe.
Hello. Hey, Patty. Hey, Al.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Astonishing X-Men. I love Astonishing X-Men. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I think, spoiler alert, I think we all three love it. But before we begin, we got to do 2 disclaimers up front. Number 1, we want to acknowledge that Joss Whedon, the author of this, is canceled. Some pretty bad stuff about how he treats female actors has come out.
Yeah.
Not many female actors he's worked with have really come out to defend him, so that probably means there's some fire behind that smoke. So
I was going to say, is this alleged or a pretty established?
No.
I think it's pretty
Here's what I'll
much-
say. So I think there's a Vulture article from January 17, 2022 by Lila Shapiro. And I would just say go read that. And I think you'll have a pretty good idea of the situation.
Yeah, without going into the details, I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some points where we're like, I really like this book and this writing, but I don't want to praise it.
Well, I just wanted to bring this up front because we're really not going to talk about Joss Whedon much, and we're just not going to get into the whole debate about whether it's okay to enjoy art created by a monster or not, and whether you can separate creator from art. We're just going to table that. We're going to take the easy way out. Sorry, cop out. Not going to comment on that, but did want to acknowledge that about Joss Whedon. And number 2 acknowledgement: rest in power, Johnny Mac Cassaday.
Yeah, man.
John Cassaday died as we're recording this. I think maybe a couple months ago, 1 or 2 months.
Yeah,
ago.
it was recent. It was very recent. Yeah.
He was 51, cardiac arrest, tragic death. You know, if an 80-year-old dies, what are you going to do? But someone who's 51, that's pretty tragic.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
And he was obviously, as we're going to talk about, wonderful artist.
He should have had many more years of drawing and making awesome stuff.
And, multiple Eisner winner, really important artist in the industry. So he will be missed, and rest in power to him. So wanted to get those 2 things out of the way. And now let's talk Astonishing X-Men. So we're going to talk about issues 1 through 6 of
Astonishing X-Men.
Of course, by Joss Whedon, John Cassaday. Colors by Laura Martin, who actually we're going to talk about that a lot too, because actually I think the color work is pretty interesting on a lot of these issues. All right, so a little background on this little comic. Actually, there's not too much background. It's just Marvel picked Joss Whedon to write the new X-Men title after Grant Morrison's new X-Men run kind of ended. And John Cassaday was picked to do the art, and that's kind of all the background research I did. This is technically Astonishing X-Men Volume 3. They were limited runs in the 90s, also called Astonishing X-Men. This was the first kind of continuing comic called Astonishing X-Men. And again, we're going to get into issues 1 through 6.
Weird tertiary team, though. It wasn't like the main team,
right. It wasn't like the mainline team.
It was like Marrow and Kitty Pryde and random random B team and Rogue.
Okay, but we're going to talk about issues 1 through 6 in this episode, which is the Gifted arc. So jumping kind of in, I guess, do we want to do general takes for this one? Do we want to do an overall take?
We can do overall takes.
Yeah, so I'll go first. So I read this at the time and loved it at the time and enjoyed rereading it now. On a personal note, this was basically the first comic that I really started reading week to week, because I read comics off and on as like a kid and then kind of lost interest. And then late, like junior, senior year of high school, these two jokers over here got me into comics. And the first comic, because when I started reading, I think this run was in issue like 5 or 6. It had already just started. And this was the first comic I got into that I was buying, every month as it came out. And I bought the first 4 issues in the Dr. No's old issue lot, where they just charge you $8 extra just because it came out last month.
You know what?
Dr. No's is a comic book store in Marietta, Georgia, which had usurious pricing practices back in the day. They're cool now. Last time I went, they were cool. But when I was a kid, they were terrible.
Are their back issues any less expensive?
I don't know. They were very nice to me last time I was there. But when I was a kid, that place, stay out of there. I'm losing track. But this was kind of the first comic that got me back into comics. And so for me, it just holds a very special place in my heart. And yeah, I just love it. And I definitely recommend it. Anybody looking to get back into comics, or specifically X-Men comics, this is definitely like, this and Morrison's New X-Men are like 1 and 1A on comics.
I agree.
To read for X-Men. So that's
this is also really just a good, on that note, just a good jumping in point. Like if you're like, the history is there, but they don't spend a lot of time messing around with it. And it's just a really good, clean story without a lot of weight of history behind it. And you can just jump in and start reading about the X-Men and have fun. It's a fun story. Yeah, I don't know. This I was just talking to Patty about it before the show started, but like I've been reading the X-Men, especially since New X-Men, but like I've been reading them for a long time at that point. But I don't know how much further I got into this run past Cassaday and Whedon, or I'm not sure how far I went, but I remember loving it. It was a very, here's what I'll say. The one thing I really love about this run is how clean and simplified it is. They really cut a lot of the weight off of the X-Men and just boiled it down to a very, close-knit team. And it's not like a boring team. It doesn't have Jean Grey. Like there's a lot, it's got Emma instead of, Kitty's back, Colossus comes back. But it's just got almost like the cartoon. It's got like it's just fun adventure, X-Men moving on to the next thing after the next thing happens, after the next thing happens. And there's not a lot of like wasted time. And there's not a lot of extra characters or another X-Men team, blue and gold or whatever you want to like doing other stuff. It's just, this is what's happening and this is it. And it's very clean. And I think that's what I appreciated most about it.
Yeah. My overall take is pretty much on par with y'all's. They stuck to this. They stuck to the smaller.
It's on par with yours.
It's on par with yours.
They stuck with the smaller cast, which I think is a good call with X-Men, because it can get very convoluted, and when you have many characters, it's just kind of becomes like Avengers Forever, where you're just you don't even know what you're reading. This was one of the first books I read where Shadowcat was pretty prominently featured. I didn't know too much about her, and I thought she was she basically kind of replaces Jean on the roster. Like the dynamic between Emma and Jean was very salient to the New X-Men run, and the dynamic between Emma and Kitty in the Astonishing run is, I would say, probably the most important relationship throughout these first, I think, 24 issues or so, or that Whedon and Cassaday did. I do give credit to the story that it really built off of what Morrison set up. Cyclops in New X-Men was kind of this, he peeled back a lot of layers they peeled back a lot of layers to Cyclops in that, made him more interesting, flawed, tore down that kind of Boy Scout persona. I felt like Astonishing is where he really starts to regain his confidence a bit, and there's a few scenes with Cyclops where you really recognize him as the leader. Emma, I thought, was more great work that Morrison started with her on, and her dialogue's very Regina George, which I loved when I first read this, but reading it the second time through wasn't as much fun. It felt like a little like Emma was putting on a character almost. It was almost like a caricature of Emma Frost. But Kitty, I thought her whole storyline was interesting because she is very naive. I'm not sure if she was naive in previous runs, but the fact that she's constantly asking if they should call the professor anytime there's a problem to see if he knows what might be going on, I thought was interesting. And to see where she's at with Professor X by the end of these 12 issues, where she's a little bit more jaded with his whole approach to everything. There's these the art does a lot of the heavy lifting, I think, but there's these subtle character developments and beats that are just very enjoyable. The run overall is pretty simple, like y'all mentioned. It's an easy read. I felt like the most recent read through I did, I really enjoyed Beast's storyline a lot more. I felt like he was kind of more of a background character.
His stuff way more this time around. He was really well done,
There's a lot of subtlety in his performance, so to speak. With the way Cassaday draws his facial expressions and what's going on within him.
I love the way Cassaday draws him. I love the fact that he's like, even from New X-Men, he had more of a snout. He was still kind of a cat-like in New X-Men, but he's even more, he's even more cat-like now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with it. Colossus is always great. I always love to see Colossus. I felt like I think he shines in this book too. They really his action scenes are great. I thought, and he has a few good bits with Professor X, but it seemed mostly like he was a vehicle to kind of help mature and develop Kitty's character to where she's at by the end of it. But I'm rambling a little bit, but overall it's a great story and the art's fantastic. It holds up 20 years later.
One thing I'd say is my kind of criticism of the book is, in terms of kind of narrative and plot, it's not the most interesting story or the most layered story. Like the actual plot is pretty by the numbers. Just we're going to beat up a bad guy and then go to the next one and then go to the next one. With the exception of the torn arc gets a little bit
Morrison
more.
Run of New X-Men, though. There's a lot of nuance and story arc going on in those issues, and like when we're going to talk about that because almost like a breath of fresh air,
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that because a lot of this, I think, is a direct response to Morrison's run, even visually and plot-wise. But so my one complaint is just that the plot is a little bit bare, but it's still fun. And then B, I do this as the issues progress, like as you get into the Torn and Break World series, this changes a little bit. But in the early issues, all the dialogue just seems kind of like everyone's joking all the time. It's just back and forth, everyone burning each other, razzing each other. Everyone just sounds like the same person. There's no real personality. It's just back and forth ribbing. And it does feel,
I think that's the Whedonness of it all.
Oh, it's definitely Whedon. I mean, it's all over the MCU, which is also Whedon connected for me.
Yeah.
But so it's super Joss Whedon, but it's just a lot. Like it's a lot of joke and just joke and joke and joke. And the issues read fast and they're fun, but I don't know. And reading it now, I kind of felt that more than when I was younger. I kind of wish it'd be a little bit more of like, can we just take a quick break and actually build character for half a second before we go to Emma and Kitty burning each other?
Well, that's what it was like, again, when I was, I guess 2004, I really loved the Emma barbs, like how bitchy she would be to Kitty. But reading it this time, it's like, Emma, like, tone it down. Like, what? It's this everything you say to her is like something mean. And Kitty always has like a weird comeback as well. But it is very much like going back to his writing style, he wrote, I guess, for TV mostly. So I'm not sure if this is his first comic, but I think that writing style maybe translates better to
the screen,
to the screen, where you have an actor or an animator that's animating, like doing kind of the work with the facial expressions and all that kind of stuff.
Kitty coming back to the team, I'll just say this before we get into issues by issues. Like I'm a big fan of Kitty Pryde. I loved the Excalibur run with Claremont and Ellen Davis, and I don't know. That's just like, that's from my childhood, but like it was still she had just not been on the X-Men in forever. You know, like, so
Right,
her coming
yeah.
back to the team to me was like, and also she does sort of grow up, quote unquote, like in this run. And I don't know, it was kind of her coming back to the team was kind of a big deal to me, but also really cool to see her grow, you know? So like, that was like a big part of like what I loved about this book. But like, because Excalibur, I mean, if you know, people aren't as old and ancient as I am, at the time back in the day, it was Nightcrawler, one of my favorite X-Men, basically, you know, like kind of thing. Like, it's always Cyclops and Nightcrawler neck and neck to me, like back and forth. But like Nightcrawler and Kitty, and then it was Rachel Summers, and then Megan and Captain Britain, basically. So like, that was like the lineup kind of. But I love that book so much. So I've read a lot outside of the X-Men. I read a lot of Kitty Pryde. So her coming back to the X-Men was kind of like a big deal to me, and I really enjoyed it, you know, kind of thing. And then bringing Colossus back, as we'll get into, was another big part of that, because I was just like, oh shit, Colossus back, oh my god, you know, like, you know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of like, I wouldn't say insane character growth or anything, but just like reestablishing kind of like norms, but in a different, like old school norms, but in like a modern twist kind of thing. And I really enjoy it.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's get into issue 1. So just starting
issue
off,
one.
You're not doing a transit. You're not going to interrupt me with your little transition.
No,
okay.
it's just changing the.
So issue 1, I want to call out. Cassaday did all the covers for and we're going to talk about a lot of these because they're iconic.
Mm-hmm.
But issue 1 is just Wolverine's claws, just straight up. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's just great. You know, that's just a good
quick cover note. And I we've mentioned this on the podcast multiple times for various reasons. Our like/dislike of Wolverine when he gets too much of the spotlight. And I don't think he gets too much of the spotlight in this book, but they do use him on the covers a lot to sell the book, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it's like,
because this is 2004. So,
yeah,
you know, the X-Men movies are big. The original Singer X-Men movies are big. And Wolverine is big. Yeah.
It's just it's just interesting that they're like, they splash page him on the cover a bunch, but then they don't get like really use him a ton, or they use him in the right way, I think. But like, you know, and you know, I just think that was an interesting little note.
Yeah, this was back when like I think he was on the Avengers at this point.
He was on everything.
Like, this was when he was on everything.
Yeah, he was
on every comic.
He had his own book.
His own book. He's in every X-Men book. He's on the Avengers.
All right, so issue 1, page 1, going to start right off. If anybody's listened to this podcast before, you know that one thing we talk about is daddy. We talk about daddy a lot. And page 1, yummy daddy, right there.
Yeah, because she's eating him.
Yeah. So just wanted to mention that. Daddy is next.
Yeah, so it opens up with this whole, there's a cure to the disease, which is at the end of the issue. But like, the whole idea is like there's this little mutant girl that they've basically given this cure to, and she's thankful because her mutant power awakening was her murdering her parents and also the cops that came to see what was happening, and so on and so on. So she had this like horrifying experience, and her mutant gift came like weirdly early in terms of like, it's usually puberty or whatever. So it's this little like maybe 8-ish-year-old girl, and she had this horrifying experience. But yeah, that's kind of how it opens up. And then also Kitty returning to the mansion for the first time and kind of like walking through her memories was kind of cool too. I liked.
Yeah. And it's cool because a lot of it. So I don't know if you all knew this, but Kitty's introduction was the Dark Phoenix saga. That's when she joined the team. Was when Jean Grey
makes reference to it. Yeah.
Yeah. She was in the Hellfire Club and all that. So just a lot of this, even visually, there's little homages to kind of her when she first joined the X-Men too, which is kind of neat.
This storyline is what they use for X3 Last Stand, the whole cure premise. But this comic does it a lot better. Tildy's
100%.
The girl that they use the cure on, her power was that she can her nightmares like manifest as physical things in the real world, and that's how her parents are murdered.
Mm-hmm.
But Cassidy's art is great because the dad looks terrifying. He looks like something out of the Twilight Zone. But I do like that concept of how terrifying it could be. I mean, every kid like wishes they had superpowers, but how terrifying it would be to have certain powers manifest.
Yeah.
That seems like it could have been with, especially in the Krakoan age with all those side shoot comics, like having a whole team of X-Men that help kids who have like terrifying freak experiences like that, I think would be a really interesting just overall concept for a book. And they tried to do that with that New Mutants movie, like make it a horror movie, which didn't hit the mark exactly, but I appreciated the attempt.
Yeah, I appreciate what they were.
I enjoyed that they were trying to do something kind of different with it, but
100%.
I mean, the movie itself was a little bit. Although
Yeah,
they
we've
shot
talked
that
about that
movie
many
like
times
2
in
miles
terms
from
of-
where I used to live in.
Oh, really?
In Boston.
In terms of comic book movies, we talked about that many times about just like, why don't they just make an interesting story and just make it about comic book characters instead of like trying to origin story us to death and then tie everything together. Like, you can make a one-off movie, just, you know.
Yeah, and so Kitty stumbles into the rest of the X-Men faculty, kind of introducing the students to the new year. First of all, there's a lot of students. Like the Xavier's Academy has really grown.
I was about to say they did keep that like through line from New X-Men where there is like actual
just tons of students
at school. Yeah.
How much do you think tuition is at Xavier? It's probably like,
I don't know
at
how
least
it
what Harvard
works.
is, right? Probably
It's
6
free.
figures.
Xavier School for the Gifted Youngsters is free.
Well, yeah, free because it's loans. I bet it's loans though.
Yeah,
it's probably loans they can't write off.
Hundreds of
they
thousands
can't
of dollars.
bankruptcy can't wipe away.
Think about how many times they rebuild the mansion just in this run.
Yeah, they do.
Logan's a joke. He's like, we should rebuild this mansion out of Legos next time or something. Like, he makes a joke in this book.
But so Kitty stumbles into that, and again, to sort of what we were talking about earlier, there's immediately kind of barbs back and forth between her and Emma. Although I did like Kitty's comeback because Emma said like, you're late," and Kitty was like, "Sorry, I was busy putting on clothes," because Emma's Emma's naked all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
I also enjoy that Emma always calls Kitty a tart. She calls her a tart like 3 times throughout these first couple issues, and it's like, girl, you're projecting.
I was like, what does it even? Yeah, come on. If we're taking the meaning of tart on its true understanding, you're the hot kettle calling the kettle black there.
And we've also got, Cyclops with a real dad look with that button down.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Yeah, big time middle America suburban dad.
He's got his khakis. He's got what's on his lap?
Is that a fanny pack? He's got a fanny pack.
Is it? No, it's not, is it?
What is that? That looks like a fanny pack.
No.
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea what that could be.
It looks like a phone book. It's probably like the book of
maybe it's
it's the roster or the playbook. We're gonna teach you all of these ways to use your powers.
But they don't get to that because Emma creates, Sentinels crashing in to the chagrin of also the X-Men.
She doesn't tell the other staff. Like, Cyclops is like blasting.
Beast has got his shirt off. He's ready to go. He's already taken his shirt off.
Beast is like ripping his shirt open to go fight. Kitty is like phasing and falling back through a chair, and Cyclops just like, Sentinels, and just like shooting the ceiling.
I want to call out one panel,
and that's what it would be like if we were hunted down and murdered by the humans. I'm like, fucking amazing.
Well, she that was a great speech that she gives.
Yeah, they will always hate us. Like just that line is fantastic.
I want to call out one frame because when I was reading this, I almost made a note because there's a scene where Emma and Scott are talking.
Yeah,
and she's standing like leg and cooch out, like nobody would ever stand that way. And I was like, why would you draw? This is clearly like objectifying her. But then they immediately just fuck, and I was like, oh right, okay, it's because they're just about to fuck, right? So touche, Cassaday.
I want to talk about that scene for a different reason though, because this is probably like the 10th time I've read this run, and Emma says Scott's pissed about her pulling the Sentinel stunt, and she said, "I scanned the students. Nearly 10% of them were more than a little excited at the prospect of a fight. I thought we should know." And then Scott says, "Which ones were?" And then Emma interrupts him and says, "I'm not Xavier, Scott. I'll go through the roster, try to narrow it down."
Yeah.
The first 9 times I read that, I always read that as them trying to pinpoint who the problem students might be, like Quentin Quire, the ones that they keep an eye on. Yeah, that went over my head literally for the last 2 decades.
She's like,
this time I read it, I was
like, he's like, which ones? Because he's like, which ones can join the team? He's not like about.
100%.
He's recruit. Well, that but the idea that for all these years I've read it for them to like try to figure out who the problem kids might be to protect the other kids. It turns out that he's actually like looking to recruit soldiers into the X-Men. Like that changes the whole dynamic of that.
Very fair. But
which I really love because it kind of just speaks to where Cyclops is headed, for 100%. The next 10, 15 years.
10 years. But well, on that note, I feel like maybe you read it that way because of all the new X-Men runs we had read before this. You know, like that was very like
Right. Yeah.
Quentin Quire and all kinds of problem kids at the
I
school.
always thought it was
like,
that.
Yeah, like I mean, like it's a very understandable like mindset to have when you're in your.
I also love the next scene when Cyclops and Emma fuck, and then they wake up to Wolverine.
Yeah, he's just
on the edge of
crouched
their
over
bed.
their bed.
But what is you guys? What is he wearing?
Who does?
Like, why did he
he was
unbutton
jerking
his
off.
shirt? Like, why is his shirt unbuttoned? And why is he?
He's not wearing shoes. He's barefoot, shirt unbuttoned.
Because he's a wild ape man. He just wandered in from outside. It's like 5 a.m. He wandered in from outside after being drunk on a bender, and he's just like, "What the fuck is this?" He probably smelled pussy, and it was just like,
exactly.
Someone fucked.
That's exactly why he's
Cyclops. There. Yeah. What stage of grieving is this, you piece of shit? And Cyclops just like, "Oh, okay, let's fight."
Yeah, and again, all this is just back and forth. Of, even Scott says, that healing power of yours is about to come in handy, and then just blasts him in the face and stuff. They're just kind of.
I love Emma and Beast. Just like Beast's like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "What do you think? They're fighting over a dead woman." Kind of. And she's
I'll
never.
Go ahead.
I'll
never forget that line of hers though. Like she says, "Superpowers is scintillating wit and the best body money can buy, and I still rate below a corpse." It's like, oh, Emma.
Yeah,
but we do have that little sprinkle. I texted you guys about it because I read that completely differently when they're fighting and Cyclops says that Wolverine was trying to steal his girlfriend from day one, and Wolverine says the only reason Jean and you stayed together at all is she was way too strong to give into what she really wanted, and you were too scared. And I was like, oh, I always thought that meant that he was like scared to leave Jean for Emma, but it's like, oh, is he too scared to give into his carnal feelings for Logan?
For Logan, yeah.
He was shirtless, crouched.
That's what I'm saying.
Crouched over their bed.
Like, you want it.
Well, you all know my theory is always that Jean's just been the excuse that Logan and Cyclops used to get to each other. That's always
you know what? On the fight though, just in general, I mean, like, I feel like both Cyclops and Wolverine, just aside from all the sexual bullshit, just like mutant wise, like they like to cut loose every once in a while, and Cyclops knows I can just fucking blast Wolverine full force and he'll be fine. So like I feel like on some level there might be just like, oh, let's fight, for fun, almost for fun, but like they're mad at each other, but they're gonna like just so they can just so Wolverine can be like and be like all raged out and healing factor it up, and Cyclops can be like, oh, I can go all out, yay, I'm always holding back.
It's just boys being boys, just typical two straight men just wrestling with each other.
Just rolling around on the carpet.
Razzing each other.
Just wrestling out back with two men with their shirts off.
Slapping each other with towels outside the showers. You know what I mean?
That's all. Having said that, I know I just joked, and I'm the biggest fan of the Jean, Logan, Scott throuple and all that. I do think in 2004 when this was written, I don't think Whedon was hinting at.
I don't know.
This was very much just about Jean and not setting up that.
But it's fun how it has that synergy now where you can look back
now
and
it kind of has a whole
interesting
after the Krakoan age.
This is the first of like the faculty meetings after some of them fight each other, and I just think it's funny. Like
there's multiple.
One, they meet in the danger room. Yeah, and then like two, it's like they're sitting on Hawaii, and then like Beast is like, yeah, I reconfigured it, but I said Hawaii so it would be peaceful, but I didn't factor in size, and they're just like literally sitting on the islands. I just thought that was funny. Meanwhile, Wolverine's literally still smoking from like healing.
Yeah, through the entire run, there's a lot of little tidbits of foreshadowing. Because again, I don't think I picked up on it till reading this run, this most recent time. But it's like the Danger Room was already kind of fucking with them because it does it a couple times where they're like, "We didn't program this. Why is it?"
Yeah,
it's like the Danger Room is already kind of messing with them a little bit.
There's also a lot of Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club. Reference it like early on that she looks off camera or like sneaks off and stuff that at the time I didn't really notice. One thing about this particular Hawaii meeting, because this is when kind of Cyclops brings up to them, like, we need to get back out in the public eye and be heroes. And
it's establishing the tone of where
not just be here training mutants, but also just be protecting people and be heroes. And this is the part that I think is a very direct response to Morrison's new X-Men, because this is
also the movies, but which Morrison and New X-Men was playing off the movies with the black leather and all the costumes.
Yeah, but this was very much a response to like the New X-Men, which was a very, Morrison's whole run was super introspective, right? Into the team, into their psyches, into the mutants on their own. And this is Whedon's response of kind of like, no, I'm just going to make them be heroes again. They're just going to be superheroes again. And they're going to wear
and Wolverine
gaudy costumes and all that and just kind of save people, right? And this is like that scene is pretty much, very direct.
Well, it's also why I feel like this is kind of reminiscent of the cartoon versus the Singer movies, at the time, like kind of thing. Like this is like back to tights and back to like yellow Wolverine costume, and like after having years of like running around in black leather pants and stuff, like they're like, all right, let's get back to like true superhero-esque kind of things. I enjoyed it for that.
And they're going to get an excuse soon because as Dr. is it Kavita Rao, is that the doctor's name, as she reveals the mutant cure, at the same time terrorist groups take hostages in a penthouse somewhere. Those two things happen at the same time. So the team suits up. And, well, one thing I want to talk about Ord. So we get a good look at Ord from Breakworld, who's with these terrorists.
Yeah.
Is it me or is he a super Dr. Seuss looking guy?
He's
like eye whiskers. Doesn't he look like something
I've never
that
like
Dr.
loved
Seuss
his
would make?
design. I don't know what's going on there. Like I appreciate it more now, but like at the time I was like, what the fuck? I mean, it's cool. He's a cool weird alien and everything. But like there's just something about it that I'm just like, what a weird
he has eye
design.
whiskers.
He does. Well, also like, which is so funny because like the under eye whiskers look so much like Danger with her like weird under eye spikes of eyelashes, I guess. Like, but like I'm like two villains in a row with weird things shooting out under their eyes all the time. It's really strange, random.
Well, no, his character design is kind of is strange, but Ord his whole storyline, not to go like in depth about it, but it's interesting because he is introduced as a very formidable villain.
Oh yeah,
and his whole
character he's not. He's a punchline in this.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
He's just a punchline.
He's pretty badass.
He takes
the first few the first few confrontations, he's very formidable, like Doctor Doom level. Like I'm in control of the situation, and then like all of a sudden there's this major drop off where he's like.
When Colossus ragdolls him,
pretty much from that point forward,
Loki or whatever, he's just smashing him back and forth.
Yeah, and then it's Colossus. Yeah, there's a brief panel of the team putting on their tights, and Emma is walking past Kitty,
and Kitty's expression,
just stripping down to get her tights on,
and the side eye that Kitty gives her as she's naked, man.
Like just like Jesus. And I love Beast is just like him putting his glasses away. Like, it's time to be a superhero. It's time to put my glasses away. Anyway, good first issue though.
Well, before we get to issue 2, I want to spend the next 45 minutes talking about this. I want to talk about Beast's costume.
What about
Beast? I love it.
Beast has high-waisted pants,
capri pants
that are like a XV shape. And then no shirt, but then he has wrist guards.
The wrist guards are weird. I will give you that.
And then they're like capri pants. They go down to his calf.
Yeah.
Like what?
You got to let his beastness show.
Why?
It's better than small blue underwear with an X belt on.
I get what you're saying.
I would just do underwear. Would make more sense than that.
If you break it up piece by piece, it makes no sense. But if you just look at it as a whole and like incorporate his blue fur as part of the costume, it's a fun aesthetic for me. I really like it. The arm guards make no sense whatsoever. It is bizarre. If you were put that on a normal looking human, they would look insane.
Can you imagine if you were a superhero and just dressed like just showed up to the crime scene like that? Like if Batman showed up to Dr. Jim Gordon dressed
covered in blue fur, I feel like it'd be fine.
It's basically the reverse of Hawkeye's costume from Avengers Forever. It's like
it's a reverse Hawkeye. That's true. Well, no, you know what it is? It's a reverse Winnie the Pooh because Winnie the Pooh is all shirt and no pants, and this is all pants and no shirt.
What if Beast came out with just a shirt on?
Just a tank top, with like just a tank top,
blue tiger dick swinging around while he's jumping around.
holding like a jar of honey in the crook of his arm, and he's like,
Fucking
"What is my name?"
amazing. Well, I'd be like, oh shit! Every panel he's jumping around, it's just a blur mark.
I do. So one Cassaday note I also want to make. I like how he draws Wolverine because he's like stout, but also like really defined. Yes. He looks good. He looks like a good.
He nails Wolverine. I like Cyclops' visor. I like when Cyclops is out of costume. This might be my least favorite Cyclops costume.
In costume?
Though. Yeah.
I like that it went back to the dome head. I'm a fan of that. Although I love like the 90s version of Cyclops where his hair is out. I also love Cyclops in the dome cap.
I love the dome head. I think it's something about the yellow lines that go up and then when they go out over his shoulders. I kind of wish they had just, I don't know. I felt like it I feel like they've played off this
general design the last few times they've designed him over the years, and this
where he's at now is pretty. Yeah, well, not now. The Krakoa and the
Krakoan was great.
Krakoan and then the terrorist Cyclops.
With the X,
that was a good
quotes. One. Yeah, those are both.
We had the red.
I mean, come on, man, that was just.
Wait, what?
The X Cyclops visor?
Yeah.
I mean,
that was incredible.
Just so cool. I mean, I don't want it to do it all the time, and I'm glad they went back to normal Cyclops visor, but like, man, that was so fucking cool looking.
But so all of this is to say, right, that point Cyclops made earlier is they're not, in response to the movies and the Grant Morrison run, but they're not just going to wear leather and like be dudes. They're just going to be superheroes again and wear costumes and all that. So they're.
I wonder why they went with like a bright blue for Wolverine instead of that like muted kind of navy blue that's on everyone else's costume.
I think color wise it matches Beast and kind of.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah,
like metallic blue, so maybe it's right.
Well, I'm just saying the one guy that's like mostly complaining about wearing tights again, he gets the bright colors. Whereas like Cyclops and although Beast's fur is blue, his costume matches Kitty and Cyclops, and they're all the darker color,
Well, I like how everyone else has like the same color palette, and Emma's just like, I'm just gonna wear white over my tits and everything else. Yeah, she's just like, I'm not doing anything but having a bra on.
Instead,
I respect you for
more than a bra. But that being said, it's
a cape to it.
It's almost more modest. It's almost more modest than she was looking at New X-Men though. So it was kind of an interesting shift.
It's a lot more modest than New X-Men. Yeah.
All right, issue 2. So I want to talk about. Let's go back to covers. I fucking love this cover. The cover of Emma Frost with her hands over Cyclops' eyes.
Yeah.
And a cool thing, because Cassaday talked about this actually in a post-trade paperback interview I was reading. But he mentioned that, he didn't want to just make covers that are just cool things. Like he wanted the covers to reveal character traits that were unsaid in the comic, stuff that's like nuance or subtext in the run. He wanted to display in the issue covers. And this is like exactly, this is so much of what we see in Emma and Cyclops relationships relationships.
Yeah. The glowing fingers like you would do over a flashlight when you were a kid with Cyclops' eyes is fucking spectacular. The fact that it's all washed in blue is spectacular. So the red really stands out. That just fucking piece of art, work of art.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I absolutely loved their relationship. Like I love Jean Grey as well, but I would have preferred to see these two together for the long haul. I think.
Yeah,
I really like their dynamic.
Like the height of Scott and Emma is like I think way more interesting, and I don't know. Maybe it's just like the ex-villain of it all, or I don't know. Feelings of an inadequacy that she's not Jean ever and will never live up to those standards. There's just like certain aspects of their relationship that I will always enjoy way more than just Jean and Cyclops together.
Well, the thing is, Jean and Cyclops were together so long that by this point, so much of their relationship was them falling out of love with each other. We've had like 30 years of them drifting apart because of reasons. And so Emma and Cyclops' relationship, in comparison to me anyway, just seems like, okay, these are two people in love with each other, and this is their relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas Jean and Scott, so much of it just seems like these are two people who got together at 18 and are now growing apart.
And they're just like locked in. Yeah.
And I just, for whatever reason, like in my mind is locked in that they're kind of over.
Sorry. Yeah. I found the Krakoan relationship so much more interesting on that note, because it was like the first time in ages since Emma and him, that like there's been like a fresh take on that whole like relationship. So throwing Wolverine into it is just like, that's so fascinating that they're like finally willing to be like, let's write a comic where they're actually, you know, having a throuple and like doing whatever they're doing. Like, is Jean just going between them? Is there overlap? Like, and I'm just like, I love that. Like that it was the first time I don't know, that they've spun an interesting note on the Jean and Cyclops relationship, other than Jean's gone and it's Emma, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, the extra layer on that too, and I might be wrong about this, but I picked up with the Krakoa stuff, there was that throuple with Wolverine, Jean, and Cyclops, so they're obviously open, and it didn't seem like Emma and Scott had any type of physical relationship anymore.
Yeah,
and it seemed like that was Emma's choice. Like Emma was actually in love with Scott, and when Jean came back, she did not want to play, you know, the side piece.
Yeah, I think she just said, I'm out.
So that's really another little interesting dynamic to her that I just love the two of them together, especially in this run.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, as I said, my initial dive into X-Men comics was New X-Men and this is about, you know, Emma and Scott are the couple in both series. Right. So I'm just kind of
but you also had like a cartoon in there.
So I know, but I'm still
you had spent time mentally with Jean and Scott together.
Right. But reading the comics, you get kind of more into, you just kind of live more of that relationship reading it through the comics than just seeing the cartoons as a kid. So I'm just anchored with Emma and Scott being a thing. Having said that, my favorite romantic relationship of Scott's is with Logan, of course.
It's a beautiful thing.
And they'll never do that in the movies. Fuck.
They're not. They're cowards.
They're not even doing it in the comic. They've already walked it back in the comics, being like, "That never actually happened. We never actually said they did any of that."
Issue 2. I just want to talk about cops for 2 seconds because it's hilarious that like it starts with
what they're gonna do when the sorry.
Well, it starts with the cops going into. We already mentioned the little girl, whose nightmares come true, murder parents. So this starts with the cops like, holster your weapon, we're here to help, like we're gonna save, and then 2 seconds later they're already firing at a thing trying to kill it. Like, it's just typical cop behavior where like all this talk about we're here to protect, like don't lose your cool, and then just immediately bam we gotta shoot.
Yeah, it's just oh no, and then it's just murder.
Yeah,
I mean, to Cassaday's art though, Tilde is terrifying inside of her alien construct.
Dude, that little girl fuck, man.
That's some horror movie shit right there.
That's something is killing the children shit right there.
My one complaint about this is her power looks a lot like Armor's, and I wish like it would have just done something a little bit different. Than just kind of a spiritual, ethereal exoskeleton thing.
Her being like lifted up inside of it though, and like hunched over and being almost not even being in control of it, like almost like she's still asleep, is extra creepy. Yeah, although I agree, it's very Armor-esque. You know,
sleep or no, she should work on her posture. She's going to grow up with a hunch, and then no one will want to marry her. And then what value would a woman have? So I think she should stand up straight.
God damn.
We need
to shift from that.
All right, back to so let's do a quick side note on just color work, because we already mentioned Laura Martin did the colors. She and Cassaday worked together a lot. She did the colors here, and just red, right? Not just Cyclops,
fantastic.
But the Nightmare is red.
The cool blues
inside the Blackbird. The Blackbird is all red,
exactly.
Like strong.
The cool blues of like the news
red.
Press conference with the doctor revealing the cure, and then revealing like this is why we're doing this, which is fucking bullshit, but all right. But then the Nightmare is red, but then you cut to the cockpit and it's all red light. Kind of classic, like World War II. You're about to jump out as an airborne trooper over Normandy or something. But like I love that it's just like the red light inside the Blackbird. Really cool.
And then, I did want to call out one thing I really enjoyed about this issue. So the teamwork that they display in saving the hostages, because y'all know I bring this up every time we do a comic. One thing I love. One thing. Joe, you already knew what I was going to say. The one thing I love about comics is when heroes actually save people and act like heroes and aren't just fighting superpowered enemies regardless of
all
what
buildings are
happens to
falling down
human
on
life,
bystanders and shit.
So I love that in this they prioritize saving hostages. Their whole plan is basically Cyclops' whole plan is let's
sneakily get everybody out of there.
Yeah, what's the word? Like, let's distract the terrorists, and while they're distracted, Kitty save everyone. Once everyone is out of harm's way, then we go in and fight the bad guy. I just love that. Like
the utilization. I mean, they don't have classes yet, so like the utilization of like the small team that they have, they're like Beast is on standby, probably just like hanging on the outside of the building because he comes crashing through the window later. But like, and Cyclops is probably on the other side of a fucking wall because he comes blasting through a wall. But like, they're all just kind of waiting. Like him and Wolverine and Beast are just waiting. And then like Kitty is just like floating up through the floor, taking a hostage down. And like one of the terrorists will look around and be like, what the fuck? Kind of thing. But like, I love her like floating up and grabbing something and singing them down to the floor. There's like a lot of really cool moments like that. And then one of the terrorists is just like, what did you say? I didn't say that. What did you say? And they're like, what the fuck? And then
he sees his old swim coach and shoots. He shoots his Uzi at the window,
which is what dark shit's going on there.
Going back to Ord's introduction, how he seems very imposing because the X-Men are about to execute their rescue plan, and it cuts to Ord inside the building, and he just says a moth, and then he goes, a single moth would have made more noise touching down, like kind of saying the X-Men's jet is so sophisticated that it was like silent, but his senses are so enhanced that he was able to pick up on it. So it's just his storyline, because I actually read all the way to the end of the Cassaday storyline. It's really interesting, actually. He's kind of a very tragic figure.
I hope you're ready to
when you get to the break
next year when we do Astonishing X-Men Part 3 and 4.
Yeah, we have to finish it next year, probably. Yeah. The way that Cassie draws Shadowcat using her powers as well is very cool effect.
Yeah, he's very good at cutting the plane through the figure, like whatever floor or wall she's coming through. Like, not every artist is necessarily good at that. Let's put it that way.
Right,
so, like, seeing bits of her fingers sticking up out of the floor as she's sinking down, little stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of subtlety, and skill in that. I think that a lot of like, as a comic reader, you might gloss over, but like, as an artist, that's hard to do. Like kind of thing, and like get that right. So like, and his looks real. Like as she's sinking through and stuff.
Well, other artists too tend to kind of draw her more transparent, like she's less physical.
Yeah, like she's a ghost.
He just draws her like as she
solid,
is,
and she's cut in half or whatever.
Yeah, it's cool. But so they distract the terrorists, get people out, and then they all bust in. I just want to also call attention to just the big dick energy with which Emma just clotheslines a dude.
Oh, yeah.
She just walks in. It was just incredible.
I love that she's like a total brawler. Like she will be the first to throw a punch in a fight.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that it's kind of like she's one of the team members that's distracting the terrorists initially, but she's also one of the team members that comes in and just starts fighting because she's diamond form or whatever, and can just crack a guy in the throat with her arm, and that's the end of it.
Right, and then Ord
Ord dismantles them very quickly, though. To Patty's point, I think is awesome.
Well, I love just how he just takes it, like just slashes Wolverine in the gut.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
I love how he throws Emma down through the floor and just goes, "Diamonds, our pillows are filled with diamonds." Like what? I come from the break world.
He's thwarted by Lockheed.
Yeah,
good old Lockheed,
which I think was awesome. Because again,
badass.
Coming from an Excalibur reader from the '80s, I was like, "Fuck yes, Lockheed!"
I just liked he burns Ord, and Ord runs away, and then Kitty just says like, "Oh, Lockheed, you're here." And I love Wolverine's comment is just like, "Man, we should make him the team leader." It's like
it doesn't run away. Lockheed blasts him in the face, and then Ord's like, "No, I can't," and freaking out. And then there's clearly a second blast because he goes flying out of the fucking window, like from a mile away. It's amazing. And I love how Kitty's just like, "Lockheed, you found me. You're the best X-Dragon ever."
Yeah, Ord goes flying. It almost looks like he actually flew away, but he
just got blasted out by a fucking Lockheed.
Anyway, and then
Lockheed doesn't really do anything else for the rest of this 12 issues that we're about to read, but like, or that we're talking about, but like, that's just like, just loved it. Just a little bit of like Lockheed just letting loose made me happy.
And then the X-Men find out about the cure, and we kind of discuss that, and we find out that Beast is a little bit interested in it because going back to new X-Men and then this, we've seen kind of Beast sort of devolve from his human.
He feels like he's losing his humanity.
More and more beast-like forms. And he really feels like he's losing his humanity. And he makes the comment, like, right now I'm becoming a cat. I said, like, what if I start losing my intellect too at some point? And what if I just revert even mentally into a beast-like form?
And I mean, but there's more of that in the second part of this, I would say.
So they hear about the cure and they're like, it could be a hoax. And then Beast says, Dr. Kavita Rao is actually like, it's not a hoax. If she's saying she can do it, she's a colleague, she can do it. So they start talking about just the implications of it all. And I think that Wolverine, like, this is a situation where you see Kitty's naivete, because she's saying, Wolverine says Rao called being a mutant a disease, and Kitty's splitting hairs saying actually she said the mutant gene is a disease. And then Emma's like, do you think the government can tell the difference between that, you stupid bitch? Like, they're going to line us up and like inject this into us. So I was very the clashes within the group. I mean, Beast being kind of the main outlier.
It speaks to the whole like quiet during the discussion, and then Emma's like, we'll just have to kill her. And Wolverine's like, second that, like, fuck yeah, let's do it, kind of thing. But Beast is kind of sitting quietly too, just kind of being like, what does this mean? Is it real? I think he's more concerned about it being real or not. Like, because there's
he's concerned because he's interested in it. I do. Going back a sec, I wanted, because one line that made me laugh a lot was when they saved all the hostages and the reporters are like, who are you, young miss? Oh, Shadowcat, how have you been here? And they go, and they see Lockheed and they're like, do you have a license for that bat? What's your relationship with the bat? And I just laughed at that. They're just like, what is that giant bat? Who is that?
What is your relationship with the bat?
Cyclops is his brain is on Ord, and like, how do we fight that? Like, this guy took us out so fast, we need to figure out how to fight this guy. They're all concerned about the cure, and he's like more concerned about them as a team and being able to take out the villain as a supervillain, kind of thing. Like, he's like, I'm fine, I just got laser eyes, I don't care.
But so Beast breaks into the lab, and that's kind of the issue ends on that quote unquote twist where Beast is just asking, I'm actually not here to destroy it. I just want to know if it works. Issue 3. So this is one of the covers I think is a little lazy. Issue 3 is just Wolverine.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Like, they use Wolverine a good bit to just be like, it's a Wolverine cover, everybody. You guys like Wolverine, don't you? Come read Astonishing X-Men.
It's got claws. I appreciate Wing Dragon Kitty.
Kitty and that kid are talking about the cure. Like, so she's basically counseling the kids about like where they're taking their temperature, kind of like, are they freaking out? Who do we need to worry about? Kind of thing. Meanwhile, there's a ton of mutants lined up outside this tech lab to like get the cure, which is sad and creepy.
Yeah, because again, not Beast isn't the only kind of monstrous mutant.
I love the scene of Beast just walking into the kitchen all tired because he's been out all night, just getting coffee and being like, oh yeah, I already got some of the cure. I got a sample. I'm going to see if it works by the end of the day. Don't worry. And they're like, what? Wait, what the fuck? Oh yeah, I went out last night after the fight. It'll take me a day. I'll figure it out. Kind of
also,
thing.
Like, Wing talking to Kitty Pryde calls her I don't think you can say retard anymore.
You can't say it anymore.
That's not.
But again, it speaks to Kitty's kind of like how naive she is, because even this teenager is like, "Are you dumb? Like, they're gonna weaponize this." She's like, "No one's gonna force you to take the cure." He's like, I know enough about the government to know. Yes, they will.
I'm on Miss Frost's side, by the way. Did you see that demonstration she did on day 1? They were always gonna hate us.
Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to mention he used a bad word, and anyway, he dies, so it serves him right.
He does die. Issue 3, my favorite part of this entire issue is Scott's conversation with Nick Fury, because it just kind of really, in my opinion, elevated Scott to like a true leader, like dealing with the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. and going toe to toe with him, because Fury basically tells him to shut up and mind his business, because what happens is Ord is armed with weapons from S.H.I.E.L.D. So Cyclops is like, why the fuck does this alien...
the terrorists who are with Ord.
Yeah. And Fury's like, I don't know. And then Fury makes a comment about Manhattan and what Magneto did, which turned out to be Zorn or whatever. And then Cyclops claps back immediately and was like, were you watching when Genosha was destroyed? And Fury says, well, Genosha is not American soil. And Scott's just like, I bet the fucking bureaucrats love your ass, you little puppet. It was a great kind of back and forth that really I think there's a lot of development done with Cyclops in this run that is carried over into what he has become in the current comics.
And one point I wanted to make about Fury, because basically every other comic we've read him in on the Mobius Couch, he's just been laughably ineffectual and a moron.
Yeah, he's clueless.
In this one, he seems a little bit more competent. Like he's kind of just holding his cards and
this
not
more
revealing
like
things, and he's actually
Fury. Yeah.
I mean, he's not super in control because Brand and Sword are kind of running wild anyway.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's like understands that and is trying to cover for it. And he's not just a complete moron like he is.
Yeah, but he also didn't have a good response to the Genosha thing, like Patty said. I also it infuriated me when he was like, "Don't get in my face, boy. That's a right you ain't earned yet." And I was like,
"Well, that's just patronizing." Yeah, I mean, but there's a difference between being like an asshole and just being completely incompetent. And I think,
he's definitely just being an asshole.
Stuff is a little bit more
competent. One of those things I'm like, fuck off, just because what? Because you're Nick Fury and you run shit like. How many times are you well aware that fucking Cyclops and the rest of the X-Men have like saved everyone?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Also, I know another thing we talk about every time we do a Nick Fury comic, but every time he's not a bald black man, I'm shocked and have to re-remember that Nick Fury is white.
Yeah. Every time, man, the best thing normal Marvel Universe ever did was get Nick Fury Jr. in there as like the Sam Jackson lookalike, kind of.
Yeah. But every time we go back and he's just like a white dude with an eye patch, I have to go like,
I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why is he white? And why does he have Reed Richards hair? So anyway, Beast and Wolverine have it out.
Yeah. Actually, I loved their fight. I thought it was a really fun fight because they're both animalistic brawlers, and it was actually really cool to see them go.
Well, I loved because Beast rarely talks shit and gets into that whole dynamic, but when Wolverine's threatening him, Beast it's the panel of just his claws out and he just goes, "Little man." Like he's about to brutalize you. But I get both their points. I mean, Wolverine's got badass healing factor and Beast is a literal beast that's devolving into a cat. Like you can't say he's not allowed to take the cure. But at the same time, like
is that we're both beasts and how dare you kind of thing. Like
well, it seemed more like it was like your.
And Beast's point is just like you can pass like for a normal person if you need to.
Well, I think it's more. It's not even. Just
I might lose
passing.
Myself,
It's like he's afraid of actually devolving, and he's like, I still have my intellect right now, but my emotions and my instincts are more animalistic than human. But you get Wolverine's point too, being like, Beast, you're one of the most famous mutants on the planet. You're an Avenger. If you take the cure, like that is
like just politically, that's a horrible move to make. Whether you want to or not, you just shouldn't. Like you just
at least not right now.
The scene of Emma breaking up the fight is spectacular. Like Wolverine's claw is like at Beast's eyeball, basically. And she's like, break and bow.
Beast
and
looks nuts. Good. Like Beast looks legit like he looks feral.
Rip his throat out with his teeth.
100%.
And then she's like, now get into the danger room before I make you tango.
When you were reading this, so the first time I read it, did you think that Emma was controlling Wolverine?
Just before the fight started?
Yeah, because Beast turns back and says Emma, and she had no right to. And like that kind of I remember when I was a kid, for some reason I had a memory of like Emma controlling Logan in this.
No, I think if you go back to Logan. I think if you go back to the very first instance when Beast like says, "Oh, I've been up all night, hope there's coffee," Emma is staring at him in the last panel, and I think she's reading his mind. And so she read his mind knowing that he wants to take the cure.
No, 100%. She told Wolverine. But I mean, when I was younger and read it, I kind of read this as Emma was sort of controlling Wolverine. But I think like she just told him. She basically just said, "Hey, Logan."
Before the fight breaks out, I think it's the lines like, "What am I supposed to do, Logan? Wait until I'm lying in front of the students playing with a ball of string? I am a human being." And he's like, "No, wrong. You're an X-Men. Like there's more weight behind you taking this cure than one of the kids that's in your exact same position taking the cure. Like if you do this, it has weight. Like you have people that will follow behind you and do it because you did it, because you're an X-Man. And that's like it, just on that basis alone, I can't allow you to do this kind of thing. And
Wolverine,
although Logan is like a hothead and flies off the handle all the time, I feel like that was a very like responsible way of looking at it to start the fight. Like, it wasn't just like, I want to fight you because I'm Logan. Like, it was very, I don't know, thought through.
Logan did say a weird thing though when he says Wolverine says to Beast, some weak sister in the freshman dorm wants to drop his powers. I could care less.
I didn't
but
notice
an X-Man ... I'm like, what does that mean? He said sister, and then he referred to the pronoun his.
I think he's just
like,
calling. I think he's just calling
like
a young
sissy?
man a girl. Yeah,
A sissy. Yeah,
he's just saying like some little girl.
Yeah, remember, Wolverine's from the 1800s.
I was about to say,
he's
also it's Joss Whedon writing, so we'll move on.
That's true.
Yeah. So also back to how Cassaday drew. I just love this fight. Like, I like how Beast kicks Logan up, and he kind of
I know,
like
the shattered
Akira,
ceiling.
cracks the wall.
Yes,
crashing
yes,
into it.
thank you. Yeah.
That was pretty
One
great.
thing I do dislike with the Wolverine fights, though, and this was with Cyclops as well, when he unsheaths his claws,
He doesn't
it's like,
do anything.
what are you doing, man? Like,
Are
are
you
you really
really
gonna
gonna-
try to slice
you're gonna-
Beast's throat open right now?
Yeah, you're gonna cut Beast in the eyeball, really?
I mean, he does. I think he does. Like, he's trying to slash
I mean, he
it.
definitely cuts him, but he's holding
Yeah,
back.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
that
sure
yellow
he's not
panel,
trying
I
to
mean, there's
actually
definitely
murder
blood
Beast,
flying.
but he's slashing.
But there's no cut marks across Beast.
It's just, it's just, I don't know. It's just don't unsheath the claws and just punch him in the face with your metal hand. That would.
But
do
I love this panel. Like, look at Beast's face.
Yeah,
he
that's
is
what we're
in
talking
a
about.
rage.
Looks like he's gonna
I
rip
love that.
Logan's throat
Fantastic.
out.
Yeah, I love that.
Back to the danger room scenes. I love the cut to like, and now we're in the danger room and having a calm conversation with the faculty, and it's just like this again Akira reference, this oversized playroom with like giant stuffed
And I
animals.
like how
everywhere.
Wolverine is sitting on a giant plush.
Yeah, he's just like, all right, well, I'll hang out here.
But yeah, it's very Akira, like the science babies room.
At what point? So I don't know if it's now or earlier. It's not now, but like I don't know if it comes later or earlier. I guess what I was gonna say, but there's a conversation between Beast and Cyclops about the cure, and Cyclops is basically like, "Hey man, I get it. Just don't do it without coming to talk to me first. I don't care what the situation is. I just want to have a conversation with you beforehand. I might not even convince you not to do it. I just want you to not be alone and like come and talk to me before you make this gigantic decision by yourself." And I thought that was again like a really good Cyclops is the leader moment. He's like taking himself and all the weight of the politics and all the bullshit that Wolverine was just putting on Beast. Like all of that shit is out the window. He's just concerned about his friend, and he's like, listen, just don't do it without talking to me first.
Well, also, Cyclops and Beast were original X-Men. They've known each other forever.
Yeah, they've known each other forever. I really enjoyed that like grown up.
I think he has a different relationship than Logan does. So
about this like huge thing that Beast may or may not do, but it was just this thing like from Cyclops coming like, hey, just I'm here for you. I just want to hear you before you do it, like period, kind of thing.
Yeah, but
I just like how he's so Cyclops is so blunt with him though. He's just like, for the record, I'm on Logan's side, but it's your life. If you decide to do it, all I ask is that you just give me a heads up so I can like make a game plan. Like, let's move on.
Yeah, but again, it's just Logan and Beast are, they've known each other as adults and on the X-Men, but Hank and Scott were kids forever, so their relationship's just completely different.
Yeah, and Cyclops has been there for every quote unquote iteration of Beast, so like through all those transformations. So I mean, if anybody's understanding like what he's mentally going through,
he was there when Beast was Kelsey Grammer. He was there.
I mean, he was there. He was there when Beast was a hairy man with
good times.
Just pants on.
Good times.
I'm kidding. Actually, I don't think Cyclops was technically ever there because Kelsey Grammer was X3, where Cyclops wasn't really around. So I don't think he actually ever knew Kelsey Grammer Beast.
They were old friends.
All right.
But issue 3 ends with them. Beast analyzes the cure and realizes that they've been using a mutant DNA to make the cure. And it's a big like cliffhanger because you think it's Jean Grey.
Well, I mean, Cyclops immediately jumps to that conclusion.
Well, and also Jean like just died in New X-Men. She's only been dead for you think you're going to bring her
and
back.
It's just what Jean does is come back to life.
He's like it's about he's like it's not. he's like, it's the cure. Is it real? Is it dangerous? Or what's the danger? It's what? Dangerous? And he goes, it's not about that. It's about the body they're running their tests on. And he goes, why does nothing ever stay buried? And then, I mean, if there's a reason for Scott to make that leap, I feel like it's based on what Beast is saying. Beast could be like, well, I don't know. It could be anybody. But he doesn't say that. He's like, why doesn't everything? You know, like the way he laments that, you're just like, that's the obvious conclusion. Come on.
Well, also historically, Jean comes back every year, so Scott's like, "Oh, it's time."
I mean, fucking.
I will say, in between,
Brand makes a joke about that later on when they're like,
"Yeah, like that's gonna."
Well, who is it? It can't be Jean. She's dead or something. And he's just like, "Yeah, that matters." Or something.
All right, another one point.
She was dead for like a solid 20 years, though. Jean, I'll give them that credit. Yeah, it was. She just came back when right before Krakoa, and she died in 2001. So that's
about
18 years. 18 years, yeah.
20 years.
Wow. Dead for a minute.
One Beast character note I wanted to make that I thought was cool was, you know, the minute he realized Colossus was being tested on, he just goes right, like, we have to go now, action mode. You know, he's not just kind of like a Donatello in his lab not doing anything. Like he immediately is in battle mode. Let's go. Like I really like Beast in this run.
I liked him. Aside from his internal conflicts of whether or not he wants to take the cure or not, when faced with the fact that they're doing amoralistic shit with like a dead body that is a mutant and whatever it is, he's like, fuck it, let's go. You know, like fight's on.
Issue 4 is another great cover.
Oh, really?
Just because we talked about Cassaday, you know, loading nuance and themes into the covers.
It's an okay cover.
No, I think it's great.
Better than Wolverine just flying through a yellow sky. So Ord goes to attack the X-Mansion while they're simultaneously going to the lab. So they're they
miss each other. Yeah.
Yeah. They
Ord goes after the X-Men, and the X-Men go after Ord.
Yeah.
And they're at each other's headquarters.
And this is really when Ord becomes just a punchline. After this, because
you think so?
Well, no, not after. He's still pretty awful in this issue. I will say this is. I mean, skipping ahead a little bit, but Ord shows up at the mansion, runs into Hisako, Armor, and Wing. And this kind of cuts to that Whedon type TV script where the big villain shows up. And I loved it at first because, Joe, the panel you got pulled up right now, like Wing's fight or flight response is already kicking in. He's already floating off of the ground a little bit, like he's about to take off. So it's like a foreboding image. And then when you cut to a few pages later, and there's these comedic beats with Hisako being like, oh, the X-Men are out of town. I guess I can take a message for you. Like they're talking to a giant alien. And then it cuts from that to Ord going after Wing in the sky, which is those three panels are pretty terrifying. The way
I like how she kind of holds back for a second.
But this pose Ord is in is just like comedic.
That's what I'm saying.
I think he's just more of like a realistically written villain. I don't know, let's necessarily call it comedic. I mean, it is kind of comedic, but I mean, like, I guess it's just he's written more like a person, you know, less of like, I'm just this imposing thing that's going to kill or whatever. Like, he's just like, all right. Which I think is fine. I don't like that didn't bother me so much. I don't think he's a punchline. I just think it's showing a little more like
he does become a punchline for sure.
Yeah,
but
later,
at this point he's still
I don't think when she's like, "Do you want to leave a message?" and he's like, "Yes, I will leave a message." And she's like, "Wing, get out!" and she just like immediately fights. Like, and I think it's on that note, Patty. Wing slightly floating off the ground the second they see him is awesome. Like just that immediate
cool detail.
I'm gonna float away a little bit. Kind of mirrored in that like fake shit Emma did with the Sentinels early on. Like Kitty was already kind of floating down and back. You know, like where Beast was ripping up his shirt, Cyclops is blasting the ceiling, even though there's not Sentinels there. Kitty was kind of like floating back down.
One other point I wanted to make is Ord also does a double kick the person into a wall thing like Beast did to Wolverine. It's just that happens a lot in this. It's a go-to move.
I feel like artists have certain fighting styles kind of in their brains, like when they draw action and stuff. And I think it kind of like translates to everyone. Whereas like I feel like a lot of comic book artists don't take the time to go like, this is how this person fights. And this is how this person fights. And this is how, like they all just kind of fight the same. So like when you read a comic written by or drawn by the same person over and over again, eventually everything kind of,
the one exception,
unless their powers are really distinctive, like Cyclops or something, you're gonna get like the same kind of punches.
The one exception is every artist who draws Captain America draws him do a split kick in the air.
I disagree. I think that was from the Ultimates, and everyone carried it forward after that.
No, Avengers Forever did it. We saw it in Avengers Forever. He always does that.
That was a Yellow Jacket. I think Captain America did it.
Oh yeah, Captain America did it.
Captain America did it too.
I disagree.
Yellow Jacket was doing splits every which way.
Yellow Jacket was
moment
doing
he could do an
splits.
athletic pose, he was doing that. Yeah. He's a bit
So
of an
Ord
exhibition.
fucks with Wing and stabs him with the cure, and he falls and just leaves him to drop to the ground like a mother.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Dark. Yeah.
And then in the last, so the X-Men break into the, is it Benetech? It's Benetech, right?
Benetech, yeah.
And they find out that they've been testing on this dead like butterfly mutant.
It's where the guys from
Mutant,
Office Space
yeah.
work.
But then they get caught. They get
caught.
Security.
Except for Kitty, who's gone through the bottom of the lab.
She
went
through the bottom.
I did like the whole like through line of her going through the metal from Breakworld and how she could tell that it was alien metal just by phasing through it, and how I liked how they described how gross it felt to her, how she felt like it was really leaving permanent damage on her molecules by trying to phase through it. I thought that was interesting because it pays off at the very end of the
I also love how
it's a little bit racist because it's somehow saying that alien molecules are dirtier and not as good as Earth molecules. So it's a little bit xenophobic, I think. But
it's a little xenophobic. I also love how it's drawn because it's horizontal panels, but it's broken up with a long vertical full page panel of Kitty just falling through blackness. And I think like just very well done. Like it shows her sinking to the floor, and then she's talking to Lockheed and stuff, and then the next page is like Wolverine and Beast are talking, and she's just floating down through black. And just really cool how that is visually shown on those 2 pages.
2 notes are, one, I wanted to mention, so while this is going on, Emma gets a message from the Cuckoos that, you know, the mansion was attacked.
That the school is being attacked, yeah.
And you can see, like, she's really like, we've got to get back now, you know. So I kind of like how it shows the effect of kind of getting that direct psychic message of, you know, Wing, you know, someone's been hurt, we have to get back. 2, the security forces of Benetech, I love how they have little fabric helmets on. They have little fabric caps. Because they're
like
armored, you know, their chest is armored and they have Gatling gun hands, but they don't
have anything on their legs, and their heads are just wide open.
It's a little felt hat on top.
They've got old timey football helmets on.
Like, no, it's like, you know how astronauts have like
little
astronaut
helmet.
Yeah. So I thought that was sort of adorable.
Pretty adorable suit of armor.
So Kitty phases all the way down Benetech, you know, down all this dark alien molecule stuff into a mysterious kind of red hallway, and back to, again, Laura Martin's coloring. This is all very red, you know, super red.
Yeah.
And she discovers our boy.
This is one of the best endings to any comic book. I mean, we've talked about, I've thought in New X-Men, that Zorn page of him with the flaming upturned car. It's like one of my favorite pages of any comic book. This is a close second. Beat for beat of her turning around, seeing him, the bullets going through her, ricocheting off of him running through her because she's still phased, and then her just putting her hand up on her heart, like, beat for beat, like, what a fantastic when she has her hand on her heart, you can see the shadow of Colossus in the background, just like smashing these dudes.
So one thing I want to, actually a lot of things I want to talk about. So one, the very first Colossus we get is just the bullet shoots through her, and it's just in the darkness. You just see it ricochet.
I love that you can see you know how he has the lines drawn on his body. Like, I love that in that one panel, all you can see is like maybe his chest or something that is being illuminated by the bullet plinging off him. But like, you can just see one little line drawn across it, and you're just like, oh shit. Like, there's not a comic book reader alive that like knows the X-Men that isn't like immediately like, oh fuck, is that, you know, like kind of like just from that one panel. It's so well done.
And then we get a full page. There's our boy who has kept in shape in his cell.
I mean, you know, he's been
certainly has. He's got some good genes.
That registers on the Zack Snyder's
1,000,000,000%.
Right? I mean, he is high up there. Look at that. Look at that definition, the mass. That
he is a competitor.
I mean, it's interesting that they only give him underwear in his.
I mean, that's classic Colossus, you know.
Yeah. And then this whole okay, interesting side note about this page. All right,
the page where he runs through her,
yeah, which is everything Patrick said is correct. It's incredible. Facial expressions, the way Cassaday draws it, incredible. Did you know this page originally had thought bubbles in it?
Yeah, so there was a lot of dialogue here.
Oh my gosh,
and
really?
Once Joss Whedon saw Cassaday's art, he took all of that out.
Yeah, he took it all out.
Because this just perfectly encapsulated.
I was gonna say that would have.
I think there's a good measure of that in the books. I mean, like, to give Whedon credit, which I hate to do, but like recognizing when the art's telling the story better than your dumbass words do is something a lot of comic artists or writers do not do. So like they'll just be like, oh, whatever, that's my words on the page. That's where they go. You know, like for him to get those pages and go, you know what? That's fucking so good. I don't need these words here. Is like a huge thing, you know, like for any writer to do, but like really awesome. And the first thing she says because of that is just Peter, you know, like the next page is fucking just tearing in.
Well, I think we've talked about before, haven't we talked about who our favorite X-Men were and top teams and stuff? Colossus is my favorite X-Men, like all time. Love Colossus. And I just look at breaking dudes' skulls on the wall. I mean, he is just going, it's incredible.
And I love it. Of all the shit that they've all gone through all the time, the reason they're there, for fuck's sake, and she's still like, stop, you'll kill them, you know, kind of thing, is like fucking amazing. Because like that's the true heroism, I think, behind the X-Men that is constantly illustrated, and sometimes it's done well and sometimes not. But this is top tier of like the X-Men are just fantastic. Well, and it's just like despite all the shit that they've gone through, they're still going like, don't hurt those humans. They're just dudes that work at this shit company. Like they don't know, like don't like, you know. And she also doesn't know what he's gone through. So
well, they, you know, this is the whole, you know, were Nazi officers following orders or were they pieces of shit?
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, well, I mean, but you'll kill them. She says you'll kill them, and then in the very next panel is like the same pose from Colossus, but he's unmet. He's depowered or whatever. He's powered down rather, and he just goes, "Katya," you know, like kind of like he didn't even realize she was there almost when he ran through her to fight.
One thing I'll mention that I really wish Peter would understand. So Katya is like not her name. You can't just invent somebody's name to be Russian. It's not her name, buddy. So I wanted to make that point. Second point I wanted to make is
her name's Catherine, and yes, it is.
Yeah, Katya. You can't just like invent somebody's name to be Russian. Like that's just not how it works. But one positive thing I did want to say about Whedon's writing is I like how he kind of displays like how horrifying these past 10 years or whatever of Colossus's life are, because when he sees Kitty, he doesn't go like, "Oh my God, you're here, thank you." His reaction is, "Oh my God, am I finally dead?"
Yeah.
Right. Which just kind of reveals like how,
meaning like if she's there, the impossibility of her being there and him being free is so insane that he's like, well, clearly I'm dead because now I must be like in heaven or something. I must have finally died.
And just the thought that he's relieved by this idea that, oh, I'm finally dead. Like he is relieved by that
I think the weight of that moment is important to hold in our minds as we move to episode 12 in the next part. I think that's like very important later.
Crazy thing with that though is that like a few issues from now, someone mentions that it's been just several months.
Yeah,
like,
it hasn't been
because of comic book time. Like the legacy virus was just like that had just happened like 6 months ago
or whatever. Yeah, it was like 4 years ago for us as Raiders.
All right, issue 5. So issue 5 also, I mean, this isn't quite as impactful a cover as like Beast or Emma and Cyclops, but I do like just a metal fist crashing.
I think it's impactful in the way that like the Wolverine claw is.
Right, but I mean, not on an emotional level, but it's just a cool
disagree.
cover.
I think Colossus being back was like a huge thing at the time. So like showing his return and literally smashing the title apart was pretty cool. I like.
Yeah, but that's not emotionally revealing like Emma and Cyclops.
No, it's not emotional revealing for the characters. It's emotional for the reader, I think.
Oh yeah,
I
but I mean it's cool.
Yeah.
Also, he's just busting up that.
Also, if you hadn't been reading Astonishing, you probably would have picked up that issue if you were a fan of Colossus.
Yeah. Issue 5.
Okay, issue 5. So we get a kind of a silly little dream sequence where Cyclops sees Jean and imagines himself dressed funnily with kind of Rob Liefeld-like straps and pouches all over.
And a tutu. Yeah.
And a tutu.
There's just a brief moment where like the team's taken out and it's Cyclops coming to. But what's going on in his mind while he's passed out is interesting. Who is this gold dude hailing people at the mansion? By the
So
way?
that's Elixir. He's like an Omega level mutant. Yeah.
Now I remember. Okay.
He heals people later too.
They literally not say his name once.
Well, again, it's like good foreshadowing. Like we'll get to it, but they introduce him so that it makes sense later. But
for the Krakoan age.
No, for the Danger.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Storyline. Issue 5 is just them breaking out of.
It's a lot of fighting. I mean, there is some heart to heart with like Kitty and Colossus reconnecting. But I actually
really love the one, we get to like a brief instance of like what Colossus was going through. He's like, it was torture, and this was every day and every day and every day, and then that's why he like lost track of time and had no idea how long he's been dead, kind of thing. But I love the pause of like them just sitting down in the hallway across from each other, and she's like, "Look, if you're a clone or a robot or something, or a ghost or an alternate person, like I can deal with that, but like if you're some fucking shapeshifter or some illusionist trying to fuck with me, I will kill you." I have a lot of emotions going on right now, and if this is some alternate version of you, I'll deal with it. But like if you're fucking with me right now, like I just love that little beat of like her coming to terms with Colossus being back alive. It was fantastic.
Like I remember like little foreshadowing bit is she says she'll kill him with an axe, and like later on in the series when she's in that Emma like brainwash, she tries to kill Colossus with an axe. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I also issue 5, my big note was that Emma uses telepathy while she's diamond up, and I hated that because that's like a classic thing where she can't use
she can't do both.
She's sort of in diamond form.
No, I don't remember that.
Didn't do your work, Whedon. Didn't do your homework.
God damn it.
Well, maybe it's her further mutation.
I actually really like the scene where Beast kind of goes feral on the doctor woman that made the cure, and it's like it's just about the mutant body that they've been using. He was just like, fuck you.
Well, my
this girl need the cure, and like just shoves her face in this dead body, and you're like, God damn, dude.
My favorite panel of this issue is, and first of all, the team does really cool teamwork to get out of the pickle. They kind of Emma hooks them all up telepathically, and they get out of it, which is really cool. I wanted to just call attention to when Ord enters the fray, he pulls out his little scythe and says, there's no, Emma is diamond up and has Dr. Rao behind her. And Ord says, there's no substance this can't cut through. And then she shoves the doctor in front of her as a shield and says, good to know.
Well, also before that the end of the Beast conversation, he's like, who else? I need to hear it from you, Kavita. Who else have you been cutting up? And the doctor's like, I don't know what you mean. Like kind of thing, like as in like Colossus, of course, but I don't want to tell you that because he's buried underneath us and you'll never know. And like it's like there's a fucking darker Dr. Frankenstein side of this woman that like is very subtle, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when Emma did that, I was like, I don't give a fuck. That makes complete sense to me.
And this is where, again, we talked about it earlier. This is where Ord really kind of takes a comedic turn into
his ass kicked
when Colossus shows up. So he's squaring off against the X-Men, and they look scared. And he goes, "What, are you too scared?" But then you see behind him, and it's because Colossus is metaled up and just kind of lumbering towards him.
He's like, maybe it's time we finish this. And Wolverine's like, okay, yeah. Why don't we do that? And then he's like, what do you all like? He's like, oh no, is that dragon thing behind me? Kind of thing. And I was like, I kind of love that though. Like, I know it's a punchline, but I think, again, he's less silly here and more like, I don't know.
This is the first time you see him get walloped. You see him get walloped. I mean, Lockheed did a number on him.
He does Loki Hulk him.
Colossus just beats the shit out of him. I mean, he slams him down like Hulk does Loki in Avengers 1 and just kind of Actually, that's
This
a very
was a
Hulk-like
great-
pose.
Yeah.
That kind of smash. But so they beat Ord, but then Shield shows
Yeah,
up.
Shield and Agent Brand show up, and I mean, like, and that kind of starts off in the next issue. But like, honestly, the next issue really for me is just about Colossus being back and them taking down Ord.
Yeah, so issue 6, I mean, there's nothing else we really need to say about 5. I mean, it's just kind of a big fight. I don't know if we
No,
really
yeah,
have
big
anything
fight,
else to
yeah.
say. Issue 6, another cover that is just iconic. I mean,
yeah.
come on.
One of the best
that
covers
one
of
I
all
love.
time.
Yeah.
Kitty Pryde phasing through and being held by Colossus, who is still in just underwear. He's still not.
So good.
Yeah, he was just
so
rescued.
sexy.
Of course, he's just in underwear. What else would he be wearing?
Yeah, great.
What do you wear when you go to the doctor, Al?
Not just under. Well, they do typically ask you to take your shirt off so they can like feel your heartbeat and stuff like that. Check it. But I don't show up to the office.
The 2-page splash of Joe's got up on the screen of Colossus throwing Wolverine.
Oh yeah,
the fastball special. That's like the climax of this entire.
Well, I wanted to say
arc.
just generally, and I know again we're not the biggest Wolverine fans. This is a great Wolverine issue. I think for him, it's he's just is awesome. He's doing God's work.
Again, when he's used the way that he should be used, I love him. It's when it's like too much Wolverine and story arc about Wolverine and everything he's going through internally. I'm like bored.
Yeah,
I just don't care anymore. I kind of like I don't know. It's just one of those things where like I get it. You're conflicted, you know. Just be Wolverine.
Yeah, no, he has a great issue, and but so this is basically resolution to this whole arc. So
why does Ord take the girl? Is that just a hostage?
I think
she's got the she's got
she's like got the cure inside of her.
Yeah, yeah.
Another thing, the fastball special.
Yeah,
there's no way Colossus could throw Wolverine 30,000 feet in the air, however high that
was. Do you think it was 30,000 feet already?
I mean, it's like beyond the frame high. Like, there is no way he could throw that man that high.
I don't know.
Disagree.
And another Wolverine thing. I love how he stops Ord, which is just punching him in the mouth and saying, "If I extend my claws, you're fucking done." You know?
Yeah.
His line is, "You
well,
bite,
he kept
I'll
going
heal.
through ways to beat him. You know, like even when he showed up before Colossus showed up, he was like, "He's got eyeballs." Like they're like, because it's him and Emma and Beast, and he's like, they're like, "What do we do?" And he's like, "He's got eyeballs." And then Emma's like, "Well, if he's a man in our way of being a man, he's got other soft spots too," or something like that. And then that's when Colossus shows up, kind of thing. But like they're already considering, like, I guess just rip his eyeballs out. Like, what else can we do? This guy's fucking impossible.
But I just love how he punches him into the mouth and just says, "You bite, I'll heal. I pop, you won't." And I just thought it was so badass. Yeah. So he forces Ord to land, and then they imprison Ord, and that's how they capture him.
There's conversation. I think this is when Hank and Scott have that conversation about the cure, right? About like just let me know.
No, that was back in the
that was
Science Baby playpen. They just have another just general conversation.
Okay,
it's about.
Well, he says you're going to use it because the cure, your samples still. He's like, I know, I don't know. I heard about the cure. It was like this great weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I never felt that weight till I felt it gone. And he's like, if Ord had tapped me instead of that poor kid, maybe this would have been all too simple kind of thing, but it's not. And I'm like, that was interesting. Like, if they had just come to test the cure on, he would have been like, yeah, all right. You know, like he might have said yes.
No, I think he meant if Ord had, instead of wing, stabbed him.
Oh yeah.
I don't think meant experimented upon.
I like that they look at it as a win, whether or not the cure is a thing or not, or like is still out there. Like they look at it as a win just because they got Peter back, and that was really cool.
Oh, and another thing I guess we should touch on that happens earlier in the issue is we're introduced formally to Agent Brand of Sword.
She sucks.
Which is Sword is like Shield, but they do space instead of Earth.
Space. She's the worst.
There's a scene of her doing push-ups in a cell, and
no,
the worst. No, I don't think she's the worst, but that's for later.
Also, we get a hint of Emma being like betraying the team. at the end.
Oh yeah. So at the end of the issue, we get hints at just that last page. Emma, there's a kind of off camera.
She's
Someone's
talking
talking
to
to Emma. Yeah.
And I think that Shadowcat is the big problem they have to get rid of.
And
Dun
she brought
dun
her on.
dun.
Yeah.
Well, I think the good part of Emma brought her on to stop her from the bad parts of Emma.
I see.
Inside all of us
Layered.
are two wolves, always in struggle.
wolves.
That's the end of part 1. We won comics for the week, boys.
Part 1. Woo!
Wait, time out. So that's issues 1 through 6. We're done with part 1. Before we end, please know that please subscribe to this on iTunes or Spotify or whatever you listen to podcasts. We have a YouTube channel. We have a TikTok channel. It's all Mobius Couch. So please subscribe and listen to all of those.
Yeah, do all those things.
And we'll see you next time.
All right, good journey.
All right.
Part 2. Couchers.
See you later.